And
Hello, my name is Nicole Snell, and you are now tuned in to Danaya Azure Radio.
yes, hello, Nicole. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, so I met Nicole when I was in LA, and the first thing I saw was that she's a tall queen and she's so fashionable. Just the most amazing energy in the room. I was like, I need to talk to her. So
Thank you. Well, I felt the same about you when you walked in. I loved your outfit. I remember I stopped and I was like, I love all the colors you're wearing. You are
right.
you
Thank
and
you.
I are like a vibe.
Absolutely, absolutely. So go ahead and tell everybody what you do, Miss Lady.
Yes, so I am the CEO and owner of Girls Fight Back and the founder of Alpha Defense. And what I do is I teach personal safety, self defense, boundary setting, de escalation to women, girls, and people of all gender identities around the world. I work with colleges, high schools, the US military, outdoor groups, companies, healthcare teams, pretty much any industry where people exist and want to feel safer interacting with people and going out and doing activities and hobbies in their personal life. I am there to give them the skills and the tools and the strategies to feel more confident going out and living your life without feeling like we have to let fear control us or that we have to restrict our life or our activities out of fear. And instead, I want to give people the tools and the skills to go out and live our life in any way that we want with full independence, with full autonomy, with skills and strategies so that we know that we can handle ourselves because we can.
So, what made you decide to create Girls Fight Back?
Well, the Girls Fight Back was actually founded by a woman named Erin Weed in 2001, and it was created in honor of her friend Shannon McNamara, who was murdered in her off campus apartment in June of 2001. And because of how hard Shannon fought, enough evidence was gathered, physical and DNA evidence, that they were able to arrest and prosecute her murderer. And so Erin started the company because in this college town, of course, women were scared. There was a lot of anxiety around safety and people weren't sure what to do after this violence. And that feeling often happens when there is a story about violence. And so Erin wanted to give the college women in that town their peace back and to teach them actionable and simple skills that they could employ in their everyday lives to feel safe. And it was also a promise to Shannon's mother that her memory would never be forgotten. And then I got involved in 2014 after the company had been sold once to another woman who her and I became friends. I became a speaker. And then in 2020, that owner decided to sell the company. And I already believe so heavily in this work. I'm a survivor myself, and I am so passionate about bringing this education to as many people as possible, expanding the programming, like I said, to all different types of communities of people of all genders. And I bought the company. And I just felt like it was the right path for me. I was so passionate about it, if you cannot already tell.
Absolutely. So, what would you say is one of the main things that people need to look out for when they're in public, like when they're checking out their settings? What's the main things that they should be very, very aware of?
I think the main thing is to really trust our intuition, right? Because depending on where we are and who we are, we're going to respond to situations differently because we all come in with different perspectives. And, if we have experienced violence ourselves, or, maybe we're in a certain part of of the city that we're familiar with or unfamiliar with, we just all come into situations with there's so much complexity and nuance that there's not just one thing to look for. It's more of looking for things that seem out of place for the situation and for like how you're feeling about the situation, right? So like I do a lot of solo hiking and I do a lot of solo traveling, and of course everywhere I go there's things that are different, right? Things that are not normal for me depending on where I'm at, and different norms and different cultural norms depending on where I am. So I really just rely on my intuition. If something feels weird, it is. If someone's trying to be extra super nice to me and yeah, I feel my intuition sparking about this person, I don't care how nice they're being. The answer is going to be no, back off. I don't want to talk. And just being that direct is a really effective form of violence prevention and de-escalation.
So when it comes, so we've heard a lot about the different stories of women who have been direct, women who have said no,
Yes.
and then they have been attacked afterwards. what are things you can kind of, what would be something that you could tell women to kind of prevent that? If this is a situation where, like, once you say no, you walk away and then go toward a group, like, what would you think? What would, if you tell somebody no, what would be like the next step when if you think that they might not accept the no?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know there are so many stories. We're hearing so many of them online on social media and news stories. And the story headline is usually something like "Woman says no and man attacks her." Woman says no. But let's be really, really clear: the woman did not cause this to happen. It is not because she said no. It is not because she set a boundary. It's because that person was an attacker. And no matter what she would have said to him at some point, the moment he didn't get his way or what he wanted, that was what he was going to go to. So what I would like to tell people is, when you feel that intuitive, like, I don't want to talk to this person, and you say no and set a boundary, if they go from 0 to 100 at that point, that means you were right. That means you were right and justified in not wanting to be near or close to this person, because they're showing you who they are. And so a lot of times the media is not showing us the success stories of women that say no and the person disengages, right? The person walks away. We don't hear those stories. All we hear is, oh, if you say no, then you're going to be attacked. And there are no guarantees, of course, in anything that we do. But the research shows that setting a boundary, that saying no, that matching the aggressor's energy with your energy is more likely to disengage and to deter the situation from continuing further than it is to escalate. Now, of course, like I said, there's no guarantees. Of course, there are outliers and there's these things that happen. But what's happening is that when a woman says no and sets a boundary, and the man that she's saying that to escalates it, that means that he's showing you who he is. He is not getting what he wants, and he's trying to use threats and intimidation to get you to do what he wants. And I refuse to be intimidated by the threat of violence into making me do something up, into coercion, right? It's basically becomes coercion to whatever they wanted, your phone number, they wanted you to have a drink with them, they wanted you to wherever. And instead, we can say no, set that boundary. And then I teach things in my programs. I teach a variety of verbal skills to where, okay, if the energy does go from 0 to 100, well, what can we do? We can de-escalate. Right. There's some strategies that I teach for de-escalation. There's strategies that I teach with your body. There's strategies that I teach as far as like safety planning in those types of situations, and to try to give us more options, to not feel like, oh, once I say no, and then if it goes from 0 to 100, now there's nothing I can do, now helpless. And that is not the case. There are still things that we can do. And it's never our fault. It is never our fault if violence happens to us.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes down to being at a party, explain why it's so important to never leave your drink, and how to kind of like navigate that. Because he would be like, "Oh, I bought you a drink." I've always been like, "No, I'm good." I like, or if they say, "Can I buy you a drink?" I need to be right present in front while the bartender's mixing it, and it goes directly to me, not to them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is just so important. If like we can just say no. If someone's like, "Oh, I bought you a drink," that's okay. I prefer to get my drink directly from the bartender. So that's a strat. So there's this book called The Gift of Fear, and if you've never heard of it or read it, I recommend it. I recommend anyone who's listening to read this book. And the author talks about these things called the tools of manipulation. And so one of them is called loan sharking, where, okay, I buy you a drink that you didn't ask for. Now the expectation, now the debt to be paid is, now you have to accept it, and you have to sit here and you have to talk to me and you have to spend time with me, which is higher value than the drink, and it's not something you asked for. And so it's a strategy of, oh, well, you owe me now. And you don't owe anybody anything. You don't owe anyone your time, your space, your body, your energy, any of those things. And you can simply say no. And if they push, I didn't ask you to buy me a drink. I don't want your
let's.
drink. And that's it.
Yes. So I know I have men and women listening. Gentlemen, if you buy a girl a drink, you just bought a girl a drink. They're not obligated to do anything with you, including talk to you. I know the movies are lying. I know that the music videos are lying to you. If you purchase a drink for a young lady or young man, no one is obligated to do anything. Even say thank you for real. They can, but they're not
Yes.
obligated. They're not obligated to interact with you. That was your choice, and you kept buying drinks, and that was on you. And I can't. You. I mean, even if you're talking to someone, and you're about now. Let me phrase it. If you're talking to someone and they're giving you your conversation and you purchase them a drink, they're still not obligated to go home with you. I don't know why y'all thought that's how that was. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. I need
No.
y'all to understand this.
Yes. Yes. And what's most important, I feel like, for men to do is to call out their friends at the club, at the bar when things like this are happening, and even beforehand, if you're talking about, oh yeah, just there's I I just came back from a conference, the conference on crimes against women, and there's a man there that I've worked with before. I've done a Facebook live with him and some other violence prevention educators. His name is Tony Porter, and he runs an organization called A Call to Men, and he talks about healthy masculinity and disrupting the cycle of violence by addressing, the man box is what he calls it, and calling in men to the conversation. To We need to be having these conversations within our friend groups, right? Because violence doesn't start with physical. Like, domestic violence doesn't often start with physical violence. It starts with verbal abuse, isolation, financial isolation, all of these things to create vulnerability. So there's steps to it. It's a cycle. And so we can prevent, the physical violence of, these men who get angry at rejection, and then they think that that gives them the right to be violent. We can stop that behavior by having these conversations beforehand, by changing that culture beforehand, by by calling out your friend. And that is going to be the hardest thing to do. That's not easy. It's easy to stand up and to say something in the heat of a situation, because then that seems like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm fulfilling my role as what masculinity tells me to do. I have to go up and be physically interacting in this situation. But what's harder to do is to have those conversations with your friends when your friends may not agree, when you may be the
Mhm.
odd person out, when you're going to be called a simp and all those other things because you are being respectful. But that's where we need this. That's where we need them to step in and to change the culture. And that is going to have that ripple effect to prevent the physical violence down the road, right? It starts here. And that's where we really need to call men into the conversation, to start, asking and encouraging having those conversations, and and checking each other when you're talking about stuff beforehand.
Absolutely. And I have Nicole Snell, CEO of Girls Fight Back, right here in Azure Radio. You know, I think you have something very, very important when it comes to the signs of issues in your relationships. A lot of people need to understand that it starts with little things. Like, it starts with the why didn't you check in, or the where are you text like 6 times in a row and you didn't get a chance to respond because your phone was in your purse. And then, why did you answer? Da, da, da. I'm like, real talk, that's where it starts. That's when you should be like, wait, something's not right there, a little bit too clingy. And then it goes from that to, are you really going to wear that? That's another big thing, because they're trying, that's that control coming in.
Yeah.
Then it goes to, who are you with? If I didn't offer that information, you're not allowed to ask. Like, I'm not understanding.
Yeah.
Like, if we're together, I will let you know who I'm with. But what we're not gonna do is demand things. That's not how any of this works. But then
No,
it gets
it's
to,
about boundaries.
yep, because then it gets to the fact of, oh, well, they don't like your friends, they don't like your family, and they try to pull you away.
Mhm.
Let's move here, let's move there. So they're taking you away from your protection.
Yes, from your
I'm
support
saying this because
system.
I've seen it in live time, and it's painful to be a part of.
Yes.
Anyone that wants to pull you away from your family miles away where they can't reach you, run. please run.
Yes.
Because they're not trying to help you. They want to isolate you so when they get comfortable, they can harm you.
Yes. Yeah.
And yes,
You're
there
speaking
are
that.
situations where, like, somebody moves or whatever for work, that's one thing. But when
Mhm.
they're telling you that we need to move away, you don't need your family, you don't need your friends, you don't need nobody, you just need me, you never want to be in
Mm-mm.
that predicament.
No.
Because they will get to the point, because then it goes to the nobody loves you, nobody cares about you, only I love you. I didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And you're trying to figure out how to recover and cover that bruise up with makeup now
Mm-hmm.
for the fifth time of the I didn't mean it. It was, it was just XYZ. I was tired. I was whatever. I was insert whatever BS excuse here. And the question is, when are you going to walk away? When are you going to know your value to know that that is not okay? Like, I remember being on and it happens, and it's crazy because it's happening younger and younger. And I remember,
Yes.
like the first time I saw something like from like a young kid, they were on like Maury, and I'm sitting here like, wait, you 13 years old, you're still in your mama's house. Why is this child allowed to harm you, and you're still in your mama's house? Why aren't you telling your parents what's happening?
Yeah. There's a lot of fear, right? They might not know what to do, especially if younger, right? They might not
Mhm.
know what their resources are. There's social pressure. The person that is doing this might be telling them, well, if you tell anybody, I'm gonna tell them this. I'm gonna spread this rumor. They might have pictures, so there might be some exploitation, potentially happening there. And so raising awareness about it is one of the key things, right? And providing resources to to offer support if someone is experiencing this, and to have a place where they can go and not be blamed, or to not feel like that it's their fault, because it's not, and just give them a safe place to be able to get the help that they need. Well, and then how I address that with my programs is, when I teach the younger folks, is like, I'm teaching them assertiveness skills. I'm teaching them about intuition and awareness. I'm teaching them ways to use their voice. I'm trying to unpack that message that we have to always be nice, because we don't always have to be nice. If our safety is at risk, we do not have to be nice. We do not owe niceness to anyone. So we can you know say, no, this is making me uncomfortable, I don't want to do this, or I don't like the way you're speaking to me, and teaching them how to set boundaries, because it's giving them more skills, right? It's giving them more tools to use. Because has become when it has become physical, or it has become, verbal, to the point where, this person is completely isolated from their situation, and they are, being abused, consistently, and they don't have a way to get out, that is the most dangerous time for domestic violence survivor. When a domestic survivor leaves their situation, that is when they are most likely to experience increased abuse, or to be murdered, because the abuser is trying to regain their power. That's why safety planning is so important. That if it is already at this stage, it's so important to connect with, like, domestic violence hotline, or UGMA, the Eugenia community, which is for Black women domestic violence survivors, to help create a safety plan, to help create a way for them to get away safely, because that is the most dangerous time. And that's why many survivors don't leave, or they feel like they can't leave, or they don't have the financial resources to leave, or there's children involved. They don't have a support system. There's so many things that the abuser has done to set it up to make it so incredibly difficult for the survivor to leave, that trying to prevent this before it happens is a key part of it. And then also having those resources and support systems available to help them to create a safety plan, so if they decide to leave, that they can do so, and they can do so safely.
So at this point, I know you've seen the video. So my question is, if Cassie was your client,
Mm.
what would you have told her to do after that incident occurred?
Mm. I find it really hard to answer questions like that because I don't ever want to say someone should have done this or they could have done this because everyone makes decisions based on their own comfort, their own perceptions, whatever they feel was right in the moment. And I don't want to devalue what someone's choice was because we all do the best that we can with what we have and what we know. And whatever got her out of that, whatever got her to safety, whatever got her to this point right now, like that was the right thing for her to do to be where she's alive and she's here with us today. So I don't want to talk about what I think she could have, should have done differently. What I would say is that if someone is finding themselves in a similar situation down the road and they want help, I would encourage them to seek out help resources. I would encourage them to reach out. If friends and family are not supportive or if they're not nearby or you don't feel like you can talk to them, contact, like I said, the domestic violence hotline, the RAIN hotline, Ujima community, and talk to somebody that can help talk through your options of what you can do to give you more information to make a decision that works for you.
No, absolutely. I agree. I think that's, because we were having a conversation on air about that situation. And I was like, and they're like, why didn't she leave? I was like, she was trying to leave. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
And she said
it's so
afterwards,
hard.
well, she found out what happens when she tries to leave. And, she might have tried again before, but we don't know. We just saw that one time she tried to leave. You know what I'm saying? But it's more, but what was so frustrating is like, why are we talking about what she didn't do? We should be focused on the fact that he's doing this and nobody's stopping it.
Yes.
And this is my biggest problem with the situation is the fact that like you watched this on camera and did nothing and called no one. I used to do security for Best Buy and so I used to watch the cameras. Me, I would have lost my job that day because I'm calling somebody on the side to just go up there and just try to assist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you? I don't understand how you can sit there and watch something like that and do nothing.
Yeah, yeah. The conversation definitely needs to shift to ask, why are these men abusing women? What can we do to stop these men from abusing women? There was just recently something I saw online, and forgive me, I don't have the exact name of it's like either a book or a movie that just came out of a man that does this training. I don't know if he's a psychologist or an educator, but he works with men and he works with men who are who have been violent, who are domestic abusers, and they're either serving time or they're like in recovery and they're trying to be better and they're in counseling. And he like asked like, what do you gain from abusing women? Like, what do you gain from the violence? What are the positive things of the violence? And the way I read it, the for like the first couple of minutes, the men didn't have anything to say, like the men in the group. And then they came up with all different types of ways in which their violence gave them positive benefits, meaning, oh, she'll always be home on time. She'll never question me. I can always get what I want. So it's domestic violence is about power and control. The abuser is trying to exert power and control over another human, and will is it often doesn't start that way, right? It like you had said, it often starts with these small things, boundary violations, trying to see what they can get away with, trying to see if this person will listen, love bombing, right? The whole so nice and gifts and everything at the very beginning to create those feelings of love and to create this relationship and to make someone feel safe and uncomfortable, and then slowly starts tearing away at the person's self-esteem. It's about power and control, and so until we address those issues, we're never going to put an end to this. And that comes by addressing it systems of oppression, right? Like it all starts with systems of oppression that have created this power dynamic in which power and control is being used to hurt people, to hurt women.
But even beyond that, it starts when children are very young. There's this video that was going around. I think it was overseas. There was this little girl getting harassed by this little boy. She's clearly telling him to go away. I don't want to talk to you. And the parents are like, "Oh, isn't that cute?" It's not cute. Or even this whole situation of if they hit you, that's because they like you. We need to stop telling kids that. I've
Yes.
never thought that was a good idea. Because if you hit me, I'm hitting back and it's gonna hurt. And that's exactly what I did when I was a kid. It's like this not gonna work out. And then I get in trouble because I'm supposed to be the bigger person. Well, he hit me first, so why am I in trouble? I'm confused. I'm not
Right?
understanding. Well, you're taller. Again, he did it first. Why am I getting yelled at? Okay, I didn't know that I was gonna make him cry, but but he's just dumb. You know what I'm saying? You know,
Yes.
it's this whole culture of, you know, oh, that's cute. They're hitting each other. Where is that cute at?
Mm-mm.
How is that
No,
showing they like each other? That's the
no,
worst lesson that anyone could give a child. And they
I
do it
agree.
consistently.
I agree.
And it's always a situation where it's like, yeah, well, or even the boys will be boys. Can we stop? Can we please stop?
Yeah. All
Because
of those societal.
you're excusing crazy behavior. Even the quote unquote locker room talk. Stop with that too. Because
Right.
that's not
That's where
helpful
we,
either. If it's locker room
yeah,
talk, keep it in the locker room where no one else can hear it.
but
You know,
also
it's
that talk perpetuates stereotypes and ways of thinking about women in situations. So it should even be called out there. Like if you hear someone saying something about a woman or a sexual experience they had, or they're talking about someone's body, like shut that down and say that's like we shouldn't be talking about someone like that. Let's be respectful of people's space and bodies, but that is not language or behavior that will be supported in those moments. And so the fear of being chastised by your friends group, being ostracized, being retaliated against, losing your social credit, for lack of a better term, in those spaces, it keeps men quiet. Even the good men who aren't abusive, the good men who would, speak up for a woman in that type of a situation. But when they're with their friends, they might not be willing to speak up because it's more valuable for them to have the approval of the other men in their circle than it is to speak out against, negative stereotypes and these type of language and talking about people this way. But that is where we need these conversations to happen. This is what we need. And conversations like we're having like this is where the change starts, by talking about it, by bringing it to light. But then we need the action. We need them to actually do that. And I do a lot of trainings with the military, and I did bystander training for the Army this past month, and I did one on bystander intervention. We talked about this, how, like, being a bystander doesn't necessarily mean you're running in the middle of a fight that's in progress and you're breaking something up, or there's an argument and you get in the middle of it. Yeah, that's part of it. But it's these small things that don't seem like they're big. They don't seem like they're going to make a difference. But it's these small things to just say, hey, ma'am, that's not okay to say. Say, if you're going to talk like that, I don't want to be around you when you're saying things like that. And if enough men do that, we can change it. Because I guarantee you that if you're in a group and one person is the one that's, talking all the mess and, always the one being really disrespectful, I guarantee you there's at least two or three other men in that group that are not okay with what's being said, but they all stay silent. Imagine if they didn't. Imagine if they all spoke up and they're like, nah, that's not okay. And then that language and that type of thinking is not being supported in that group. And that will inspire the person who is now having negative reinforcement from the group. That is going to inspire change in that behavior, because now he knows that type of behavior is not supported or accepted.
exactly, and this is the thing. So when it comes down to um relationships, it's supposed to be mutual respect. And if it's not a mutual respect, what are you doing there? And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be a situation where everybody has to make the same money or whatever, but there has to be a mutual respect there, because everything is something to the relationship. And no, you should never let anyone shame you for what you don't have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Boundaries are so important, and interpersonal boundaries can be really hard. Whenever I'm giving a presentation and I ask, is it easier or harder for you to set a boundary with someone you know or a stranger? And most people say it's harder, to set a boundary with someone you know, and it's easier to do it with a stranger. So when we understand that, then we can start developing tools and strategies to, okay, well, how can I feel more comfortable articulating what I need to somebody else and to people I know? Because sometimes people might not be aware that they're crossing someone's boundary. They might just not understand, maybe from their own perspective, what they're doing is okay. I'll give you a quick example. I was doing a training, and I had asked this question of, what do you consider a I said a phrase and asked if you thought that that was a green flag behavior or red flag behavior. And the question was, somebody, when you say no, that person doesn't accept your no. And almost everybody put it as a red flag behavior. I had one person that put it kind of almost in a green. And so I asked, I said, why did you say that? I'm curious, what makes you think that's a green flag? And they said, well, it's because if I'm really struggling, I want my friends to keep pushing me until I tell them the thing. Like, I want to know that somebody cares so much about me that if I say no, I don't want to talk about it, but they know I need to talk, that they'll keep pushing and not accept that, and then keep pushing, because then I'll know they care. So in their mind, that was a positive, that someone cares, that they're not going to let me blow it off, and they're going to keep pushing. But imagine that person with that perspective applies that to somebody else who considers it a red flag behavior. Now we have a problem. Now we have
Exactly.
miscommunication. So
Most
learning how
definitely.
to
Yeah, because
communicate.
mhm. And what I will say is that I wouldn't say not accept your no. I would say when you ask somebody if they're okay, or how are they feeling, and they just say okay, that's what I would say. Dig deeper, because
Yeah.
I'm okay means so. It depends on how it's, especially if you're texting. Dig deeper, because that can be interpreted so many different ways. And typically, when someone says "I'm okay," they're saying that because they either don't know how to talk about it, or they don't know if you actually want to know, or what I'm saying, or they're timid, but they want to say something, but they're trying to engage and see if the person that they're talking to is open to receiving what they're saying.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
pay attention to how your friends and loved ones say things,
Yes.
because that's a clear sign if something's wrong.
Yes. And even
I
check on your friends who never say that anything's wrong, that seem like they're always happy all the time, because that could be a sign too, that they're putting on a happy face, but they're struggling with something else. So I think that's important to add too. Like, just
Oh no,
check on your
absolutely.
friends.
Yeah, because there was there's a photo that I know you've seen it, where like the girls, there's a couple, they're nice and happy on social media, but in the background he's twisting her arm.
Mm,
That happens more like that, and that was just basically to say like everything isn't always what it seems online. So
very
like
true.
that happens way more than you think. I've actually seen that kind of thing in real life from an artist that I work with. Because I was like, it was weird because she was usually pretty private. And then all of a sudden she was like really, really like posting and lovey dovey, and found out it was all bad. All
So
bad.
sorry to hear that.
And luckily she's recovered from it. But it's just to see it in real time is just like, because
Hmm.
we're like, something doesn't seem right, because she's not, because she's like, yeah, she's a private person. So it was awkward for us. We're just like, why is she posting all the time with this guy?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
pay attention to things like that, and little things like pay attention. What I would say is pay attention to your loved ones' posts. If they
Hmm.
start changing, call them, because sometimes they'll throw out little smoke signals to see who's paying attention, because they want to say something but they can't.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, if you suspect that a friend or a loved one is experiencing domestic violence, the best thing that you can do for them is just to be there for them, right? Like, if the abuser is trying to get you to separate, like, stay in contact as much as it's safe for the person, right? We don't want to put that person in harm's way because the abuser's saying, "I told you not to talk to this person," but just let them know that you're always going to be at the end of a phone call if they call you. Don't judge them for staying. Again, it's so hard to leave, and leaving is the most dangerous time for a survivor. It's when they're most at risk of being unalive. So it's very important that when and if they do leave, they have a plan in place. So it's not as easy as just saying, I'm just going to pack up and go. And so, but just being there for that person, and being willing to listen and not judging them, right? Like if they try to leave and they don't leave, and then maybe they leave and they go back, right? I forget what the statistic is, but a survivor tries to leave multiple times, right? Before they actually leave, they leave and come back, because again, the fear, the power and control of the abuser. But when they do leave, it's important that the friends are supportive and not saying like, oh, I told you to leave, or why did you wait, and because then that feels judgment, and then they don't feel like they have support, and then now they're even more alone. So just being willing to listen, saying, hey, I'm here for you. What do you need? What can I do for you? Is there anything that I can do to help you? What, do you want me to go with you to talk to a counselor? Do you want me to go with you to get a restraining order if that's what you feel like you want to do? Do you need me, can I make you a meal? Can I, just being there so that they know that when they leave, that they have people that are still going to be there for them, and that they're not going to face judgment.
Definitely, definitely. One question that I would ask you, because you're in WeHo, so I know
Yes.
you. Which for those of you that don't know, there's a lot of the rainbow community is in WeHo. There's a lot more that happens with domestic violence in the rainbow community, but they're nervous to say something. Um, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone that's in the rainbow community? What is the best way for them to address it when the cops aren't taking it seriously? Who else do they go to?
Yeah. So there is on my website, I have a resources page, and I have resources for different communities. So I have one for the LGBTQ plus IA community. So I would say reach out to one of those organizations. The Trevor Project is a great resource. The LGBTQ Center is also a resource where they would be able to refer you to people who are going to hopefully listen, right? I would assume that they have resources from people who are supportive of the community and can get you set up with an advocate. Like getting assigned a victim advocate can help you, walk through what your options are and how to get to safety. And I would say that would be one of the best first steps that I can suggest.
I agree. And as anyone that's in law enforcement that's listening, it is not funny when anyone comes to you and says that they have been harmed. It is not cute to be like, oh, what happened? And all that kind of like take it seriously. Because
Yeah.
I've heard way too many stories of people in the neighborhood community that they try to come, and when a gentleman comes to you and says they've been harmed, please take that seriously, because they won't come to you. And it's so sad that I've heard several experiences where guys will say that they've been harmed by their partner, and if it's a woman, the cops are like laughing and acting a fool, and I'm like, do you want your job? Because that's unacceptable. Why are we
Yeah.
still doing this in 2020? Insert whatever year. Why do we think that it's okay for you to abuse your power? you
Yeah.
know, when you're supposed to be helping this person, they're coming to you for assistance, not to be ridiculed and not trust police ever again.
Right. No, and I think that comes down to needing more training, right? Like law enforcement needs more training. They need more training on how to respond to all types of domestic violence. They need more training and empathy, right? On how to handle and how to interview. There's an organization called End Violence Against Women International, and they do a lot of work with law enforcement because their founder is a former. She's a former prosecutor. She's former in law enforcement, right? And they have this whole thing: start by believing. Like that, the first thing when someone comes to report to you, start by believing that it's true and then investigate, right? Like with any other type of crime, we need to do that for these gender-based crimes, for domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, human trafficking. Like start by believing the victim, and then do your investigation and research, but start from that place of empathy. And they offer trainings on like how to interview, what type of questions not to ask, what types of questions to ask, how to create a safe space, how to things like that. So I feel like that type of education, that type of training is so essential to make sure that when a survivor does go to law enforcement, when they are being physically harmed and they need protection, that the law enforcement is then capable and able to listen and provide the services that they need, because the stereotypes have been debunked and thrown in the trash where they need to be. So, and because they've gotten the proper training to be able to do that.
Absolutely. So, what is your advice for people to stay safe online? Because I
Mm,
think a lot of people don't understand that we've gotten so comfortable just DMing people and texting, all those kinds of things. And, these are strangers.
mhm.
So, what would you say is some of them that can you give me 5 tips to help people stay safe online, especially when it comes to online dating?
Yeah, so I typically don't like I give strategies versus tips because I feel like and they're kind of similar. Like a lot of people think of tips and strategies as the same way, but for me, I find that it's different because sometimes when people give tips, then it's assumed that, oh, this is you do A when X happens, and that it's but it's not always like that. Like safety is not always as cut and dry as that. So instead, I like to give strategies. So if you're okay with me giving strategies, like 3 to 5 strategies for safety online, and
Yes.
then people can move and shift and use them based on how they need. So I would say the first thing is to avoid live posting. Like, don't share your location live. I don't ever share my location live. I post things usually weeks after they've happened, so that nobody actually knows where I am in a given day or moment. I don't have my live ping on when I do anything, so that nobody knows where I am. Nobody should be able to find you except for the people you love who need to know where you are or who you want to see, right? So I think that that is the first thing, is just protect your identity, protect your location. Avoid oversharing, right? Especially if someone's coming into a DM and asking all these questions. Just because someone asks you a question, it doesn't mean you have to answer it. You can say, I'm not comfortable answering this question, or I don't answer questions like this, or this is too personal, I don't want to share this, and setting that firm boundary. Be wary of people who are coming in and trying to be like extra nice, especially in DMing and flattery and whatever. Like, just be wary of unsolicited communication, right? Like, we don't have to avoid it. Like, I've heard happy stories of people like, oh my gosh, this person, they shot their shot, and now we're dating, or now or whatever, right? I've met a lot of people on Instagram through this work that I then met in person, and they were great, right? And we like did events together and things. So there's positives to it and there's connection, but it's just trusting your intuition. I would say that is the key, right? If someone unsolicited, starts talking to you, okay, like, I'm not going to say don't talk to them, but just be wary of what you say, be wary of what you share. And if things feel weird, you can discontinue. And I think that's the beautiful thing about social media, is that you can like block and delete someone immediately, and there's no threat in that moment, right? Like face to face, I get people that don't want to deal with confrontation feel harder to do that. But Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, they make it very easy to just block, delete, and then you don't have to hear from that person. So don't be afraid to use that block button. Like, if people are being disrespectful in your comments or anything like that, block, delete. You don't even have to deal with that. So yeah, I think those are the main things that I would say. And that if 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 something feels weird, it is, regardless of who the person is, right? And identity theft is on the rise, right? So just be careful of sharing, private things that someone could then think that they could use as a password, right? Like your best friend from elementary school, or your first pet, or things like that. Just be wary of sharing personal details with people that you don't know, and even people that you might think you know them, but maybe you've never met them in person. Just be aware of that as well.
Absolutely. And one thing that I would also say is be very careful if you're going to post your kids.
Oh
I I'd
yes.
I'd say avoid as much as you can. Sometimes it can be avoidable if your kids, if obviously your kid's a model or whatever. But if you're posting your kids, be very careful of what you share. Do not post their birthdays.
Mm.
Like, don't do that, because people are paying attention, looking at dates and looking at times. They can act like they know the kids, all that kind of stuff. Don't stop that. Please stop that, because I'm like, didn't somebody tell them? That's not how it works. If you're gonna say they had
Yeah,
a party, do that. Like, post it like week after. Oh wait, we had a party. Blah blah blah. That was awesome, but don't let people know like what day exactly your child is born.
yeah. No, I agree with that. There are so there's this organization called Niccosi, the National Center on, I'm gonna butcher the but they deal with sexual exploitation and like children sexual exploitation and photos and revenge porn and things like that. And unfortunately, there are cases of people who have bad intentions, offenders, predators, who will take pictures of people's children from Facebook or something. And, AI is very powerful now, and there aren't a lot of safeguards. And so, there's no way to completely minimize all of our risk in the world, right? There's no way to avoid everything because the world keeps changing very quickly and crime keeps changing very quickly, and we don't want to avoid participating in life, and being online or doing things. Like, there's no way to really completely disconnect, but the best thing that we can do to still feel like we can interact and live and not have to be worried all the time is just to be aware, to learn these new things as they're happening, to do as much risk management as we feel comfortable doing, and responding to things that need a response.
Most definitely. So, when everything is said and done, what you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be that I helped make the world a better place, that I helped women and people of all gender identities feel safer going out into the world, setting boundaries, taking the jobs they want, going on that solo hike, taking that trip, walking their dog at night, and just living and experiencing life in the way they want with less fear and more confidence. Like, my mission line, my tagline is that when we are empowered to live our lives freely and confidently, there's no limit to what we can do. And I believe in giving people the strategies and tools to live their life safely, to have ways to respond to situations so that we don't have to just avoid life activities because we're afraid, and instead be able to go out and to enrich ourselves in all the different ways in which we can interact with the world and with people. And by doing that, we can help change the world, right? We're challenging those stereotypes by simply finding our power and our confidence in doing these activities and expressing ourselves and setting boundaries. And all of these are ways in which we are disrupting the system. And if we have enough people disrupting the system, we can change the system and we can create that world free from violence. And that's what I want for the world, for us all.
I love it. I love it. All right, Miss Lady, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you, follow you, and most importantly, book you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So you can visit me on my website, which is two websites: Nicole Snell, NicoleSnell, NicoleSnell.com. Also at girlsfightback.com. I am on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Girls Fight Back. And then you can also find me on my personal Instagram page, Adventures of NIK. I have a YouTube channel with my outdoor defense series. I have 3 seasons and 60 episodes of safety in the outdoors for everyone. And you can find that at Outdoor Defense on Instagram, or sorry, Outdoor Defense on YouTube, or my handle on YouTube is Nicole_Snell. But if you just Google Outdoor Defense or you go to my website, all my links are there. And you can book me right from my website. I have all of my links there, my email address, contact form, all of those things. I would love to work with your community and help spread empowerment and safety for everyone.
Awesome sauce. Thank you so much for coming on. You were so amazing. Like I told y'all, I promise you, I literally looked at her from across the room and I was like, I need to have her on my show. She's fabulous. She's amazing. And just a beautiful, beautiful energy.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel the same about you. I'm so glad that we connected. Thank you for having me as a guest. I'm so honored that you invited me to be on your show.
You're so very welcome, Miss Lady. You have a wonderful day and let me know whenever you want to come back. You are more than welcome.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great day too.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.